Donors have been pouring millions of dollars into the tone precincts in Washington, but yet in America, in our heartland, our public is not nourished with either good ideas or prudent leadership. The racket, with its shrill talking heads spewing easy answers and with its circular firing squad mentality, has turned off America. Well, at least until Obama overreached, gave us the stimulus package, and spurred the next conservative renaissance, right? Last year has been looking pretty good for us liberty lovers in a lot of ways. The amount of time between a movement's flourishing, between when it actually comes to fruition, and the time that it is a racket, really has to do with how much time it takes for that racket to return to principle and to begin articulating the principles that really what built that movement. It is interesting to know that nearly all important political philosophy and political theory comes out of times of great trouble. When thinking men are forced to examine their first principles and seek the means to avert the imminent collapse of order so as to restore some measure of justice and security to a wounded society. The political writings of Plato, Aristotle came out of such an age. So did Cicero's works, and Dante's, and Hobbes, and Machiavelli's, Hooker's, Locke's, and Burke's. All came at a time that tried men's souls. So too, at a time of great trouble, did the disastrous theories come of Marx and Rousseau, which spawned the French Revolution and ruined and disfigured much of Europe. Which is why we need a principled conservatism which is attractive to the American people, one that is intellectually grounded, sound in tradition, and uses the philosophies of our great philosophers, Kirk, Burke, Hayek, and so many others, and is delivering those philosophies in a clear, sophisticated voice, which draws new people into our movement. It's time to get back to basics. It's time to get back into the right books. As my senior partner, Randall, says, you're only as good as what you put in you. And what ends up happening is a lot of people start reading a lot of this trash that's being circulated as red meat by the screamers from the movement. And anyone who's watched this, what's the name of that movie where the guy eats McDonald's every single day for weeks? What happened to that guy when he's filled his body with junk food? The same thing happens with your mind. We must return to these timeless classics. Nice job, Randall. So for Reagan, it wasn't really about the party. He had been a Democrat his entire life. It was about the ideas, the permanent things, the timeless truths that had been ratified through the entire human experience. But it is important to point out that the Declaration and Constitution, though drawn up by men of incredible philosophical knowledge and power, the Constitution and Declaration are not, in and of themselves, manuals of political philosophy. As Russell Kirk puts it, the Declaration is simply a declaration, a highly successful piece of political propaganda. Such philosophical concepts as find expression therein are so mistily expressed as to mean all things to all people, then and now. The Constitution is not a tract at all, but a practical instrument of government molded in part by necessary political, practical compromise. We must remind ourselves that beneath any formal constitution, any constitution that's on paper, and even beneath our Constitution, the most enduringly successful of such formal documents, lies an unwritten Constitution, much more difficult to define, but really more powerful. The body of institutions, customs, manners, conventions, voluntary associations, which are not even mentioned in the Constitution, but which nevertheless form a fabric of social reality and sustain the formal Constitution. To discuss the future of American politics, we must confess, vastly important though they are, that our Declaration and Independence do not constitute the end-all and be-all of political philosophy. When the file affords no precedent, we must turn from the legal brief to the political philosophy. There's just not enough in here to make it all happen. I guess I should point out what the job of the New Centurion Leadership Program is. We don't run a campaign school. Our faculty's job is to teach the philosophies to the pamphleteer and to the politician themselves. In other words, extract the great ideas from our philosophers so that way they can fashion them into something useful and something popular with which they can enlighten the people. We also put in front of our students the most experienced political professionals as well as professors to give our centurions not only a deeper intellectual firepower, but also how to improve their skills as pamphleteers. If you like that idea, I can tell you that we'd be very happy light bulbs if someone would hook us up with some donors so we can pay the light bill and put on a lot more classes. To read from Matthew Spaulding's outstanding book, We Still Hold These Truths. Unique among the nations of the world, America was founded at a particular time by a particular people on the basis of a particular idea. The men who launched this experiment in popular government claimed the new basis of political legitimacy, the consent of the governed. Through a carefully written constitution, they created an enduring framework limiting government based on the rule of law. We were to become a nation of laws, not a nation of men, not a nation of rulers, but rather a nation of laws. Our national creed and common purpose can be explained in 10 core principles. 1, liberty. It's the grand overarching theme of our nation's history. Equality, natural rights, and the consent of the governed are the foundational principles that set the compass for our politics. Religious liberty, private property, follow from these, shaping the parameters of our nation's day-to-day life. The rule of law and the constitutionalism of limited government define our architecture that undergirds our liberty. All of these principles in self-government, in the political sense of self-government, meaning a republican governance, in the moral sense of governing ourselves. And lastly, independence. Independence is the word that encompasses the meaning of America's principles in relation to the rest of the world. Our foreign policy is built on one of independence. We're not beholden to an organization like the UN. We are sovereign in and of ourselves, correct? A nation conceived in liberty. Well, what is liberty? English is the only language that has 2 words to describe it. Liberty and freedom. What do they mean? You guys can participate a little bit on this. I know I'm talking really fast, but... Could someone give me a backup on the water, please? So, what's the difference between liberty and freedom? It's important to understand this difference because it really helps us understand the founder's concept of that principle. Freedom is understood as a more expansive form and suggests a general lack of restraint, especially a lack of political restraint. Thank you, Mr. Mark Ward. Appreciate that, brother. So, freedom is expansive. It's kind of like how God created the mind. The mind is free. It can do bad things, it can do good things, right? Liberty, on the other hand, is, make sure I find the right line here. Liberty means the rightful exercise of freedom, the balancing of rights on one hand and responsibilities. The moment in which our nation was, is everybody with me on that concept of the difference between liberty and freedom? Okay. The moment